visit a number of our schools. I've been in all the schools since school opened. I've done some targeted visits over the last few weeks. I've been doing the town hall meetings with the students at the secondary levels. I still have to be, I'm at Beck and Carusi, I think next week, but I've been at High School East, High School West, and at Rosa. Have had phenomenal discussions. You know, the ladies have participated. One of the things that they actually did on last Wednesday during the PSAT was doing voter registration again. And we've talked a lot about the involvement, especially with this generation of kids in the high schools who are so astute and informed about what's going on in the world around them. You know, and as we continue to enhance and nurture their voices and help them to share them and how to share them, you know, we talked a lot about voter registration. The kids have had some great suggestions about what we are doing and how we are moving forward. I'm also doing targeted visits in our schools and with our buildings and grounds folks, where I go in and meet with staff, sometimes in small groups and sometimes one-on-one, and just they give some incredible insight in terms of what's going on. This also starts the season as I go out and meet at PTA meetings. I am always willing to go out and to meet with PTA groups or community groups, you know, to talk about the great things that are going on in Cherry Hill. You know, one of the specific topics that I'm covering right now is the referendum. You know, on December 11th, we will go out, you know, a little more than $210 million worth of work that must be done in our schools. The website that's been set up, the technology department and Mrs. Wilson, the work that they've done to put all of the information on the website is absolutely fantastic. There are specific links, you know, to the projects that will go on in each one of the schools. I encourage you to take a look. I encourage you to see the pictures, and I encourage you to ask questions. There is an FAQ that's listed on that page with some of the questions that continue to come in. We will continue to update that. I think one of the greatest things that included in there is a tax calculator, where you can actually put in and see, you know, for the assessment on your home, how will your taxes be impacted by the 3 questions. And as again, there are 3 questions. They are sequential. Question 1 has to pass in order for question 2 to pass. Questions 1 and 2 have to pass in order for question 3 to pass. The primary focus, again, in question 1 is health, safety, and security. We talk about the security enhancements that we want to do throughout the schools in the district with the introduction of the security vestibules at all of the schools, the camera systems, the swipe card access, the site lighting, and additional things that go in with that. There is work that must be done in our schools. One of the greatest things that we can do, you know, to continue to maintain the level of education, because again, the greatest resource that we have in Cherry Hill is the human resource, right? The staff members that work with our children on a daily basis and the children, right? We get some really good kids that come into the schools on a daily basis. They're the greatest resource, but we need to make sure that we continue to enhance the facilities. There's work that always must be done. 19 facilities, 1.7 million square feet of schools. So please take a look at the website, look through the individual schools, look at the 3 questions, look at the impact. December the 11th. December the 11th is the vote. The polls will be open from 3 o'clock until 8 o'clock. We want as many people to ask questions about it and talk to us about it so they can get the information. Incredibly excited last week to spend a couple of hours with the Education Foundation, and Mrs. Judge talked about the Cherry Hill Ed Foundation, you know, and as most of you know, they have raised and donated more than $1 million to the schools over the course of the last 15 years. It's an incredible organization in town. I did a presentation, talked about the referendum. The Cherry Hill Ed Foundation took a formal vote to endorse the referendum, to endorse the 3 questions, because they value the work that must be done. They value the work and the impact that we'll have on our children and that will have on our schools as we move into the future. So please make sure you take a look at those. And that's all.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Malash. We'll now move into our action agenda. Mrs. Seidel, would you move C&I, please?
I will. Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, approval of attendance at conferences and workshops for the 2018-2019 school year. Number 2, a resolution approving a service agreement. Number 3, approval of out-of-district student placements for the 2017-2018 school year. And number 4, approval of out-of-district student placements for the 2018-2019 school year. And you all have a white sheet in front of you that has item 5, approval of special education settlement agreement. Do I have a second? Mrs. Judge, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Seidel.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Judge.
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack.
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino.
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz.
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
I need to abstain from student placement at Bancroft. Yes to the remainder.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes to all. Mr. Tomlinson, would you move B and F, please?
Yes, I will. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, financial reports. Number 2, resolutions. Number 3, resolution for the award of bids. Number 4, resolution approving the transfer of local share funds to allow for funding of exterior door replacement and related work at various Cherry Hill Public Schools sites and wall repair and related work at Mann Elementary School construction projects at East High School. Number 5, resolution for the award of transportation. And number 6, acceptance of donations. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack. And then Mrs. Sugars wanted to speak to numbers 2B and 4 before I take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. I wanted to highlight a couple of items. These are some things that we had spoken to the B&F committee about, but had not shared with the full board. So I had told the B&F committee that we were having a bid opening on the 5th, which was Friday the 5th, for the project that we have been talking about, the exterior wall project over at East in the transformer room area. And so we had that bid opening, and much to our surprise, our bids came in a lot higher than our estimates had been. Now you have to remember that we were doing these estimates in January. And from then till now, when we looked at the amount of electrical work that needs to be done, obviously, our numbers came in a lot higher than we had anticipated. So I'm going to let Mr. Middleton add some additional information on that. But related to that item, item number 3, is item 2B. And in item 2B, we are appropriating some additional capital reserve funds to address some capital projects. One of those being the work I was just speaking about. Also, the roof work at the East Auditorium. While we were doing the repair work on the auditorium roof, we discovered that there is a parapet issue in that section of the building that needs to be addressed. Now, we don't know at this point the extent of that. We're still in the exploratory stage, taking a look at that. But as we were preparing our resolution tonight to appropriate some additional funds out of capital reserve, we decided to appropriate them at this time rather than come back to you a month from now and then do another appropriation. So in this appropriation tonight, when we look at the ductwork, that was a project that we had budgeted last year, and so we needed to appropriate just $10,000 more for that project. With the East Auditorium roof, we're looking at some additional work that needs to be done on the parapet wall there, and we put a healthy estimate in there because we're not exactly sure what that roof work looks like at this point. We're not exactly sure until we do a little bit more exploratory work what that looks like. So we wanted to make sure we had a healthy estimate. If we don't use all the funding, we can return it, we can use it for other projects, but we know that that funding is there and available for us should we need it. And then finally, the wall repairs on the operational area on the other side where the transformer room is. I'll let Mr. Middleton talk about that for a few minutes.
Thanks, Lynn. Actually, that was a good segue regarding preparation of the budget for the parapet. We did not go through that step to update the Board of Education with an equivalent update on the wall repair work at the boiler room wall. So hence we were left with what looked to be a grossly inadequate budget because the original project budget was merely an electric service replacement. The project morphed into a wall repair and an extensive electrical replacement, which includes reconstructing a corner of the building where the transformers are. So it's a very integrated project between the electrical work and the wall reconstruction work back by the boiler room, simply because we're working over top of, around the entire electrical service to the building, which includes a PSE&G transformer vault, and actually demolition of that vault in whole and reconstruction of a new space for use by the district because we're moving the transformer outside. So that scope was never included in the original budget for the electric service replacement, which was more electric gear replacement than the service replacement. So this scope of work that resulted because of the wall reconstruction project required us to move the transformer to the exterior of the building, run primary conduits for PSENG to run a new primary service into the transformer. So that's where it appears that there's a huge deviation between the budget and the actual bids. We reviewed the bids with both of the contractors, and both of them, although they're $250,000 apart, were generally in the same ballpark on how they approached the projects. There's some tough general conditions of maintaining weather tightness to the building, because the corner of the building that we're tearing down, where the transformer vaults are, is immediately adjacent to a 4,000 amp switchgear. So we're exposing that to the exterior of the building, and there's a whole lot of steps that are going to be necessary to waterproof the building and maintain it in a fully operational condition during the course of the project. So that's primarily what you're seeing. It's not comparing a $360,000 budget to a $1.5 million project. The step that did not occur was updating the budget for the project. So then to jump on what you were talking about, Lynn, with the parapets around the auditorium, the roof is approximately 90% complete. During the course of the work, we saw some structural issues that are of concern regarding the parapet around the entire perimeter of the auditorium, some 530 feet of perimeter of the auditorium, more than half of which is above a roof. So right now we're going through a fact-finding step to determine as-built construction conditions, because what we're seeing from the probes that we've done into the building so far is that the construction is there does not match the as-designed condition that are indicated on the original drawings. So we're reviewing that now. We'll get into a design and evaluation phase, and then potentially a construction repair phase for that portion of the work. Any questions?
Can you just repeat that last statement again? The design doesn't fit the drawings. Just repeat that part again. I want to make sure I heard it.
So we've investigated some of the construction of the parapet walls. And the parapet wall, just so that everybody knows, is the wall from the roof level up to the top of the wall, which most people don't see from the ground. The roof is actually below the top of the walls that you see from the ground. So the parapet walls at the auditorium are approximately 3 feet tall all the way around the perimeter. That's where the band of cast stone is at the top of the wall. So what we've found from the limited investigation we've done into the construction is that the reinforcement and construction doesn't match the original design of the wall construction. So we're doing additional work to get into the wall, cut openings into the wall to find out exactly what's going on at the critical portions of the building.
Thank you, John.
Thank
so
you.
I just want to point out again, in that resolution, again, we are estimating above what the current costs are, just to give us wiggle room on these projects, since we don't know what, potentially, if there were change orders, if there was additional work that had to be done. We don't want to keep coming back to the board to ask for funds out of the capital reserve account. So right now, the parapet wall repairs are an estimate. The transformer room work, we know the base bid is the $1.5 million. However, we did build a cushion in there just in case we come across some other things. The rooftop ductwork is a small project, but again, may not necessarily use all of those funds, but did not want to come back to the board multiple times asking for additional funds, so we did it all in one. And in item number 4, we are simply closing out some projects that we have completed and moving that funds into the exterior door project, which we are finishing up, so that we can just close out some of those old projects and use the funds where they're needed. Are there any questions?
I have kind of a procedural question about the wall repair, the roofing repair. Originally, we had explored doing it as an emergent project so that we wouldn't have to expand the current contract with the roofer. How are we going to go about it now? Is that still the way, or are we not doing it as an emergent project?
Well, I think it's going to depend on what they discover when they go in and they look in the, in the walls and what we're dealing with exactly.
Right.
Our
It's a little
plan
bit up in the air until we get these physical probes cut into the wall to find out what's going on. So that'll determine how urgent the condition is to deal with.
The issue really is that the roofer cannot finish his work
Right.
until we figure out what's going on and what repairs need to be done.
Correct. Thank you.
And we will make it clear in a future agenda, if money put back into the fund, or if it'll be very clearly stated on a future agenda. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, so if
I'm
we
not
were not
wording it
to
well,
use
but
all of the funds, we would at some point transfer it into another project if it was needed there, or transfer it out
Yes, thank you.
back into
Thank
the
you.
reserve.
Perfect.
All right, if there are any more questions, Ms. Sugars?
Mr. Tomlinson,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Seidel,
I need to abstain with respect to CDW on the bill list. Yes to the remainder.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes to all. Mrs. Judge, would you move HR, please?
Yes, I will, Dr. Dickinson. Thank you. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointment certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, leaves of absence certificated. Number 6, leaves of absence non-certificated. Number 7, assignment salary change certificated. Number 8, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 9, other compensation certificated. Number 10, other compensation non-certificated. Number 11, approval of revised job description. And I'd like to point out that we have a pink handout which adds to number 3, appointment certificated, adds to number 9, other compensation certificated, and we have number 12, ratification of the EACH contract. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack. Any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong,
I abstain from item 3 regarding Rowan University, and yes to the remainder.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes to all. Mrs. Scarpolino, would you move P&L, please?
Certainly. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, approval of Cherry Hill Public Schools HIB self-assessments and statements of assurances. Number 2, waiver of regulation 2340 field trips. Number 3, approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying investigation decisions. Number 4, resolution approving a contract between the Cherry Hill Board of Education and Maitre Gims, I think is how you pronounce it. Do I have a second? Mrs. Seidel, are there any questions?
Can I just say something real fast, Ms. Scarpolino? So item number 4, the contract between the board and Maitre Gims. Maitre Gims is a French performer. He's going to be coming over and performing at High School at East. He's Congolese by birth, but has grown up in France and is a well-known performer, a mix between rap and singing, I guess. One of the French teachers at High School East has been involved in helping to set this up. Students from across the district and actually from across South Jersey will be attending, and they'll be doing a concert at the school and be doing a pep rally to go through. So they're very excited. The kids are very excited. The staff members are very excited. Some of the teachers have used his music in French class, for a number of years. So he will be there performing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars?
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes, Dahl. Okay, we have no items for strategic planning this evening. So we'll move right into our second public discussion period. You may now comment on any issue.
No, I'm interrupting you, and I apologize, but I just want to go back to HR and just say how pleased I am regarding the ratification of the EACH contract. I missed the opportunity to say, yay. Okay, back to you.
Is that your public comment? Okay. When you come to the mic, please state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes for your remarks.
David Rossi, 102 Roanoke Road. First I wanted to say I hope Mr. Goodwin returns soon. I kind of miss his smiling face. So, and thank you, Dr. Malash, for making the statement regarding the literature that was found, or the pamphlets that were found around. I think it's important for us as a community and the students to, you know, to hear that and understand it. So I didn't want to talk about the bond tonight, but here we are. So. The bond was released on the 25th, I believe, so I've been digging into the final copy of it, and it led me to investigate other surrounding districts. Now, I know that we're the 12th largest district, and this is the largest state school bond in New Jersey history, but that kind of coincides, I suppose. I hold two bonds here. One is ours for $110.7 million, and this one is I have is Maple Shade. And the reason why I bring this one, because I've been looking into it, and everything is itemized on here. Everything. Now, it's a considerably smaller district. There's only 4 schools. There's 2 questions. I think it's a total of about $50 million. But everything's itemized. I mean, it's itemized per school, per question on how much. It's itemized per project, per door installations. It's itemized for, I mean, $100,000 for security vestibules. Everything is itemized. I don't see any of that in ours. Nothing's itemized, not even how much each question is allocated to each school, or how much dollars are being spent per question per school. And that just kind of talks about accountability, or we really don't know. And without knowing that, we really don't know if we'll be in situations like we currently have now with the roof in East. I mean, obviously, as we dug into the project, more things need to be done. We can't have the roof leaking. And I will say that I don't know if I'm going to vote yes or no on question 1, 2, or 3. I really don't. I have to really dig into it. We've got another month or so, or not, in about a couple months. And how much are we paying the consultants? And how much are we paying the lawyers and the architects? We don't know. I mean, as a community members and taxpayers, we don't have the answer to these basic questions. When I look at the other bonds, and this isn't the only one, by the way, from Maple Shade, everything is itemized. We don't have anything close to that with these. So it's difficult as a taxpayer to look at this and make heads or tails other than the total dollars spent per question and what projects they're earmarked for. So I was hoping for more clarification on that, or more, you know, transparency. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you all for coming out. Have a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Scarpolino and Mrs. Matlack. Good night, everybody. Thank you.